Hi, today we're going to talk about one of the most legendary drivers in Formula One, the three-time world champion Austrian Niki Lauda and his horrific crash at the Nürburgring Nordschleife, where he nearly burned alive. This is going to be interesting. The story of Niki Lauda begins on February 22, 1949 in Vienna. The story itself is fairly typical. Lauda grew up in a wealthy family, but his parents did not share their son's passion for motorsport. They wanted him to become a doctor or a lawyer, so they had no intention of financing Niki's racing ambitions. And as you know, without money, there's nothing you can do in racing. But Lauda didn't give up. He started his career in small European racing series, such as mini racing and Formula V, as well as one-make championships with Porsche and Chevron. However, the Austrian didn't achieve any major results there. To move to a fundamentally higher level, in 1971, Lauda took out a large bank loan and bought himself a seat with the March team in Formula 2. Essentially, Niki Lauda became what many disliked, a pay driver. It's worth noting, though, that things went quite well for him in F2. So well, in fact, that team owner Robin Herd invited Lauda to drive for the same team, but now in Formula 1. The following season, Niki competed simultaneously in both F2 and F1. Despite his success in Formula 2, things didn't go well for the Austrian in the top tier. Niki Lauda finished the season without scoring a single point. But he wasn't about to give up that easily. He took out another loan. This time, Lauda bought a seat with the British BRM team for the 1973 Formula 1 season. Overall, the Austrian showed strong driving skills, but the car's reliability left much to be desired. 9 retirements in 15 races and just 2 points by the end of the season. But everything changed the very next year, in 1974. Ferrari, which at that time was going through a difficult period, decided to refresh its driver lineup. The team signed Swiss driver Clay Regazzoni from BRM, who suggested they take his teammate Niki Lauda as well. This was undoubtedly a risk for the Italians, but it paid off. By the 4th round in Spain, Lauda had already won a race and finished the season in 4th place overall, while his Swiss teammate became the runner-up in the championship. And that was only the beginning. The following season, Lauda won his first world championship title with Ferrari. And in 1976, a truly life-or-death battle unfolded. That season, the fight for the title came down to Niki Lauda in a Ferrari versus James Hunt in a McLaren. A feature film, Rush, was later made about this rivalry. Lauda won 5 of the first 9 races and built himself a comfortable lead on the way to his second title. But then, everything changed. August 1st, 1976, at the Nürburgring. The Nürburgring circuit in Germany, in its Nordschleife configuration, the famous Northern Loop, is over 13.5 miles long, making it one of the most dangerous racetracks in the world. By 1970, 69 drivers had already lost their lives in official events on the Nordschleife. And in 2004, during one episode of Top Gear, Jeremy Clarkson said that over the years, the track had claimed more than 200 lives. 3-time world champion Sir Jackie Stewart famously called the Nordschleife the Green Hell. He was one of those who actively pushed for improved safety standards, including on the Northern Loop. To give you some context, racing safety wasn't a major concern in those days. Manufacturers focused on building the fastest possible cars, and spectators wanted to see a breathtaking show, a race with death itself. The original Nordschleife had no guardrails or proper safety zones. The track essentially ran through dense forest, and going offline straight into a tree was frighteningly easy. In 1974, the circuit was modified in an attempt to make it safer. The reconstruction was completed in 1976, and the Nordschleife triumphantly returned to the Formula 1 calendar. However, the safety improvements were still insufficient, and one of the drivers who criticized racing on the Nordschleife was Niki Lauda himself. The main problem with the Northern Loop was its insane length. Organizers simply couldn't ensure safety along the entire circuit. There weren't enough doctors, firefighters, or track personnel. Despite the objections of some drivers, no one was going to cancel the race. Lauda was criticized for cowardice and arrogance. Spectators wanted bread and circuses, and they got them. Lauda initially started the race on intermediate tires, as the section of the track near the pit lane was quite wet. But after completing a racing lap, the Austrian realized he was losing huge amounts of time on the drier parts of the circuit, so he decided to switch to slicks. This was 1976. Tire warmers didn't exist back then. Lauda went out on completely cold tires. Entering a corner at around 125 miles per hour, the rear of the car suddenly stepped out, and Lauda's Ferrari slammed into the barrier at full speed. The car bounced off the wall and ricocheted back onto the track, rupturing the fuel tank and leaving a trail of fire behind it. The driver following him, Brett Lunger, couldn't avoid the burning car and crashed into it. Lauda was effectively burning alive inside his own car. Marshals and nearby drivers rushed to help. One of the men who pulled Lauda out of the burning car was March driver Arturo Merzario. After such a horrific crash, Lauda was still conscious, but it was clear that he had suffered severe burns to his head. Niki was taken to the hospital, but no one could guarantee that he would survive. Lauda had not only suffered terrible burns, but also severe poisoning from toxic combustion gases, not to mention the risk of blood infection and other complications. But Lauda didn't just survive. He returned to Formula One only 6 weeks later. He underwent skin grafts and later had plastic surgery to reconstruct his eyelids, but his face remained permanently scarred for the rest of his life. There are two popular theories about the cause of the crash. One suggests it was Lauda's own mistake, while the other points to a technical failure of the Ferrari. Despite the Austrian's remarkably quick return to the grid, the remainder of the season belonged to James Hunt. The fate of the championship was decided in the final race at the Japanese Grand Prix. Hunt was trailing Lauda by just 3 points. However, the race took place in heavy rain, and after 2 laps, Niki parked his Ferrari, stating that continuing under those conditions would be suicide. Hunt, on the other hand, finished the race in 3rd place and became world champion, beating Lauda by just 1 point. The following year, Lauda confidently claimed his 2nd world championship title with Ferrari. However, the previous year's situation in Japan permanently damaged Lauda's already strained relationship with Ferrari. By the middle of his championship-winning 1977 season, the Austrian announced his move to the Brabham team, which at the time was run by Bernie Ecclestone. However, 2 seasons with the British outfit failed to deliver major results, and in 1979, during the Canadian Grand Prix, Lauda announced his retirement from racing. After retiring, Niki founded his own airline, Lauda Air, but he couldn't stay away from racing for long. In the 1982 season, the Austrian returned to Formula One with the McLaren team. His first 2 seasons at McLaren were not particularly successful, and it seemed fair to ask whether the comeback had been worth it. It absolutely was. In 1984, in his 3rd season with McLaren, Niki Lauda became a 3-time world champion. His 4th season with the team was his last, and in 1985, the fiery Niki officially ended his Formula One career. After retiring as a driver, Lauda continued to work in the aviation business with mixed success. In 2001, Niki returned to Formula One as sporting director of the Jaguar team, but left the role the following year without notable results. He also worked in television as a commentator and expert, but perhaps his most significant role in the paddock was as non-executive chairman of the Mercedes team. In that position, Lauda won 5 world championship titles with the team. However, the horrific crash at the Nordschleife left not only scars on his face, but also lifelong health problems. Niki Lauda underwent 2 kidney transplants, and in 2018, after complications from a common cold, he required a lung transplant. Following the operation, Lauda had to take immunosuppressants to prevent rejection, which severely weakened his immune system. On May 20th, 2019, Niki Lauda passed away at the age of 70 due to complications from illness. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, live technically.